Here's so today's Diwali or Deepavali. We're reminded 100 languages in India and so many different cultures. And so Diwali and Deepavali, of course, mean the same thing, Festival of Lights, different ways of saying. Just like Shiva and Krishna mean the same thing, different ways of saying. There's a blessing here shared from Swami Chinmayananda. Swami Chinmayananda, have you heard about Swami Jyotir? Swami Jyotir is, he's the remaining, in North America, the remaining direct disciple of Swami Shivananda. So he's in Miami. He's had ashram there for 50 years, more than 50 years now. And there's a beautiful following. We've had the opportunity to have his darshan, and then Krishnadas has met him, and those of our Sangha that travel, Sri Ganesha and Sharada have met him, etc. Here's a blessing that he shares on Deepavali. Oh. The light of all lights, Hari Om Tat Sat. Love of God lends luminosity to your life. Feel that God is enshrined in the lotus of your heart, and your soul is enfolded by his boundless love. Expand your heart through selfless service of humanity. Be like a moving temple, feeling the presence of God at all times. Where there is love for God, there cannot be worry. How can there be darkness where there is light? Fight the battle of your life with a heroic spirit. Behold the victory of light over darkness. Just as the moon showers nectar on the earth by reflecting the light of the sun, let your mind shower goodwill for all by reflecting the light of God. On this auspicious occasion of Deepavali, may God shower his choicest blessings upon you. Hari Om Tat Sat. So the Durga temple is decorated beautifully. I saw the lights, they were on last night as I went down to the temple area, and so we'll be out there this evening celebrating. And the best way we celebrate something is by, we could say symbolizing it, but a better way is embodying it. The best way we can celebrate something is to embody the celebration. So, okay. So Bhagavad Gita, we start with Gita Dhyanam. There's an English translation of the Gita Dhyanam in that Kirtan book. It's that single sheet that's loose. So we can read together. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us, O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers, and the milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent, and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay, so this morning we get to discuss, ruminate upon, reflect upon what it means to see all as one. So that's our discussion for this morning. And there are different ideas about that, but you can see what Lord Krishna tells us it's really meant by seeing all as one. Ready? Are you ready?
Yes.
Yes. Ready and awake.
So we'll start by reading 5 and 6 again. We could read 5 and 6 every day.
Yeah.
And we get a beautiful lesson this morning. It's the lesson of Shravana, the lesson of listening.
Mm.
You know what's funny is that the ego-tainted mind is apt to say, so most everyone here didn't listen, right? Anticipated, and chanted over Hari, and weren't even aware that he wasn't complete yet.
Right.
And all it took was listening. And then it's interesting how the ego-tainted mind, having been caught in that, will say something like, see if you heard this inside, but I was listening. And then what do you hear? Yourself. That's the thing we're suffering from, for God's sake.
Yes.
We think we're listening, but we're only listening to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so look at how subtle it is. Look at how deep it goes. And end it, cut it, by listening to the Lord instead, by listening to what's really here instead. Search and replace. Oh,
this is fascinating for me because for the past year and a half, I was listening to Swami Shiva Shankari in my head because we sang it differently. So I went automatically into how we had sung it. And I didn't even know that I was singing it off until you had called it to my attention. And then when I heard how he sung it, like, oh my gosh, this is totally different than what we had sung. And then I had to listen.
Yeah.
But it was so interesting. My mind went right to what I had done habitually for the past year and a half.
That's it. And that's what we suffer from. I mean, that's it. And then we take the habitual thought to be the reality. Bonita, you got that? We take the habitual thought to be the reality. So, and there's a little discussion right off on this. So 5 and 6 again, this translation from Swami Satchidananda. You can rise up through the efforts of your own mind, or in the same manner draw yourself down, for you are your own friend or enemy. And then number 6, which speaks to this process of awakening. And of course, awakening is becoming aware of what's always here. The self, capital S self, doesn't wake up, it's already awake. So it's a process of unveiling or removing what? The attachment to this tape.
To the thoughts.
To this habitual tape. The attachment to it. Unveiling it, taking it off. Like you take clothes off. Take it off. So he says, as you gain control of your mind, so he's talking of the way, right? As you gain control of your mind, with the help of your higher self, then your mind and ego become your allies, but the uncontrolled mind behaves as an enemy. So he's got a lovely commentary. He says, this means that if you are a friend of your own higher self, and if you have no enemy within you, then you see friends everywhere. This is so because the world is nothing but your own projections. Gopala, we were having this discussion yesterday. What do you see? And something speaks up and says, but I'm just telling you the truth. But it's not so, is it? You see? We continue on this. It's not. It's my personal version of the truth.
Yeah. Speaking my mind.
Yeah, right.
It's a common,
that's it.
Common parlance in the West.
Speaking my mind. I'm just speaking my mind. So this is so because the world is nothing but your own projection. If your mind is inimical, it will see everybody as an enemy. If you don't know how to conquer your own lower self, then it acts as your enemy. It doesn't behave for your benefit or to your advantage, Instead, it always tries to fulfill its own desires, whether you get the benefit or not. Once Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa told this fine story. He says, a few people were walking along the road early in the morning, and they saw a man lying on the side of the road. The first one said, quote, he must have spent the whole night gambling and couldn't reach home, so he fell asleep here. Gamblers are like that. They don't reach home safely. And then he walked away. The next one spoke, quote, poor man, he must be very ill. We shouldn't disturb a sick man. Let him rest here. And then he walked away. The third one came and said to the man on the roadside, quote, you're a bum. You don't know how to drink. Don't you know 1 or 2 is enough? Probably they gave you free drinks and now you're down. And he treated him as a drunkard. The first fellow thought the man had been gambling and was sleeping. The second thought he was sick. The third thought he was drunk. Then the fourth man spoke, quote, a saint doesn't care where he is. Probably he's in higher consciousness, samadhi. A saint can be anywhere. He may be near the ditch, near the river, in a temple, sitting and meditating, or even lying down meditating. This man is probably above physical consciousness. Let's not disturb him. He then bowed and walked away. So who was right? You see, which one told the truth, Gopala? But each of them experienced the situation exactly as they projected it
Themselves.
And they would say, that's what it is. Correct? They'd say, that's what it is. That's what I saw today.
That's the eyewitness account.
That's the eyewitness account. And it's so strong, right? It's such a clear voice. Yes? It absolutely must be correct because it's so clear. But what is it? He says, we don't know who was right. All 4 may have been wrong. They all saw the same person differently because why? Because they projected
their internal view of themselves.
They projected themselves. Yeah, that's it. So when you say, we were talking about seeing something yesterday, right? And so you know that the report was completely different. And then what does this say? This ego mind says, I'm just telling the truth. Right? Or it says, I'm just saying it as I see it. I'm just speaking the way it is. It says that, right? It sounds quite valid, doesn't it? And the voice is coming from within you. It seems to be you that's saying it.
What about that circle of people and you say, what is a telephone? And you each whisper into each other's ear like what the first person said, and by the time it gets around, it's completely different.
Oh. So they projected themselves. A drinker thinks that the other is drunk. A saint sees a saint. The world as you perceive it is nothing other than your own projection. If there's hell in your mind, you won't see heaven anywhere. If there's heaven in your mind, you can't see hell anywhere. That's why it said, correct your vision and you will see the truth. Self-reformation will bring the right view. If your mind itself isn't corrected, but is poisoned and acts like an enemy, then the whole world is an enemy. That's why Sri Krishna says, if you are your own friend, says you are your own friend and you are your own enemy. The teaching given here is take care of your own mind first. Does that sink in? Do you hear
What
it?
stood out for me is that even the saint is projecting.
Of course.
That means that the saint is not seeing what's really here either.
Why do you say that?
Because projection is the...
You don't know. The truth is you don't know. And what it's saying is, according to how you see, for you it is. That's all it's saying. Do you want to see the truth? Then you have to use discernment for that. You have to get to the truth and then you can see the truth. That's coming next. You have to get to the truth. You have to let go of all the stuff you're holding on to. That's what's being shared, right? And according to the condition of the mind, you will see. And so according to the condition of the mind will be your enemy, because you'll see drunkards everywhere. You'll see enemies everywhere. You'll see problems everywhere. Oh my God, there's so many problems in the world. You'll see it everywhere. Or you'll see God everywhere. Which one's right? Well, it doesn't actually make any difference which one's right. Which one leads to a state of inner peace? That makes a difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mind will never know what's right. But it can shut up. And then you will. Got it? Second sutra of Raja Yoga Sutras. What is it? Yogas? Say it, please. Chitti Vritti Nirodha, which means when the mind shuts up, that's yoga. Yes? So, what is yoga? Yoga is abiding in wisdom. Abiding in the self, capital S self. Being aware of the self inside and outside. Not even being aware of an inside and outside. That's yoga. Samadhi doesn't mean eyes closed, remember. Okay, so who's seeing that higher? The self is seeing the higher. The mind got out of the way. So for the mind that's undisturbed and sees only the self, capital S self everywhere, or saints everywhere, then what's happened? The mind has shut up. But the mind that's seeing drunkards or problems or terrible people or these awful things that are happening in the world is what?
Disturbed.
Is it quiet?
No.
It's disturbed.
Yes.
It's disturbed. The mind can't see the truth, but the mind can get out of the way.
So I shouldn't take that example literally, is that?
What do you mean?
Because let's say the saint was seeing the person was in samadhi, but the person was really drunk, for example.
But you don't know. How could you ever know? That's the person's inner state. So there's a hang-up on there's some truth to the situation. The truth to the situation is there's only God here.
Mm-hmm.
There's no person. That's the truth to the situation.
Yes.
It's not that they're drunk, it's not that they're sane, it's not anything else.
Yes.
Right? Which one of them is right? And as he said,
None of them.
none of them. But look at the inner state and see that it's the inner state that's projecting outward. That's what the lesson is that's being shared.
Oh, I see.
And it's projecting outward, but also that inner state is trying to convince you that it's telling you the truth. Right? Because each of these four have conviction that they know what they saw.
Yes.
But then, so that's fine. So what? So what? Look at the state of mind, and now you can speak. Right? Which one has an undisturbed mind? And what is yoga?
An undisturbed mind.
Undisturbed mind. See? If you want to talk about the truth here, just be quiet.
That's true.
Because the highest truth is silent.
Mm-hmm.
Silence, fullness, silence. So Ramana Maharshi speaks the truth, but his students didn't care much for it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So he'd have to speak out loud. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
The mind continues to look for some truth that can be observed with the senses. But it cannot be. However, through the power of discernment, the mind itself can be your friend in leading the charge to see what's really here. Right? The mind that supports, through discernment, that supports coming into a state of peace or samadhi, then that mind is a friend. So that's what leads us to number 7. What is a friendly mind supporting? With a self-disciplined mind, you experience a state of constant serenity. Serenity is sama. Again, sama. So there's samadhi again. With a self-disciplined mind. So the mind itself participating in the discipline of the mind. Yeah? You see that, right?
Yeah.
See today you see it. Because we've all experienced so much going on in here, and then who is it that tells the mind, no, my dear, be quiet. It's really not like that. It's a higher aspect of the mind, isn't it? Yeah. So we could say guru, highest aspect of the mind, like that. So with a self-disciplined mind, you experience a state of constant serenity, correctly identifying with your highest self, Atman, who remains unaffected in heat or cold, pleasure or pain, praise or blame. So, and we are in a situation where the intellect itself can negate itself as an independent entity. Through the process of discernment, the instrument of discernment can come to see that it doesn't have any independent existence. Right?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is like a mantra in here. It was for a period of time during pilgrimage in particular. I am thine, all is thine. Now, who's participating in repeating this? That's this intellect. That's the instrument of discernment, having come to see that I am thine, all is thine. You're everywhere here. So in a way you can say this intellect, this discernment is looking up and seeing the light and saying, I am of the light. Right? And it has come to a place of conviction about this. There's no doubt in it. It doesn't try to wander any longer. It doesn't want to go do something on its own. Right? It feels comfortable in the light. It willingly participates. Intellect, power of discernment. Having determined that it doesn't exist independently. Having determined that its existence comes from the One, through the power of discernment. That's the great power of discernment. So, and that's what we call, and so this awakening is never far away, It's never far away. Use this intellect, purify, listen to what the Lord is teaching us, put it into practice, do our best to live it. This life is just a science experiment anyway. We've been trying things all this time. The difference is that we've been trying what we say. Our own mind. We follow the mind. And the mind says, happiness is over there. And so we run over there. And we check it out. We look behind the covers. We see. A few births later, it wasn't there. But my dear mind, I trust you. You're my guru. You lead me to the next adventure. And then, where are we going now? And we traipse along after it. And a few births later, we say, it wasn't there. It's a grand science experiment. We plant seeds, we water them, we fertilize them, we nurture them, and they grow, and we see, was it what I wanted? No. And now Lord Krishna is giving us a formula and saying, try these seeds. At some point, the intellect says, I've had enough of my seeds. Let me try these seeds. And then we just see what happens. And then we just see what happens. You know, if we really seen it clearly, that's called vairagya. Dispassion, I don't want to follow myself anymore. Right? And then, yeah. So there was the moment where the thought came, wait a second, why are you following people that are unhappy expecting to be happy? I felt like that was a very good question. That was the realization, you know, that, well, it looks like money's not going to do it. So, and my boss was a miserable sort. God love him. I worshipped him. I idolized him. And I found that interesting. So let's try following someone that's happy. Plant those seeds. See what happens. Samadhi. Samadhi, that's what happened. Mind is stable and at peace. It doesn't imagine itself to be separate. So, who remains unaffected in heat or cold, pleasure or pain, praise or blame. Right? Undisturbed whether you love me or you don't love me. But of course, not wanting to cause you not to love.
So,
true?
I was going to say, but couldn't there be, I'm just seeing within myself, not outside, but the potential for the ego to say, or a voice within to come to use that as a justification. Oh, I'm undisturbed if this person hates me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then using that as a justification not to rectify it or not to see what my part in that is.
Sure.
Because it's another backdoor defense mechanism.
Yeah, so you have to be vigilant, don't you? You have to be vigilant. It's best not to believe yourself.
Yeah.
Just carte blanche. Try that. Try not to believe anything and use discernment and see if what you're saying is actually true or not. It'll slow life down. It'll let you look more carefully. Oh, Bonita.
So, with this mind, how can you trust in discernment?
Vigilance. Vigilance. But also, trust the teaching. Enough to put it, trust the teaching, not your mind, and then put it in practice and see what happens. That's actually what's being suggested. You know you can't trust yourself. So trust the teaching enough to put it into practice. And see what happens. Yeah. Look and see, check in and see if you have a little bit of faith in the teaching. And if you have a little bit of faith in the teaching, then look and see what you have a little bit of faith in and put that into practice. Shravana, listen, manana, contemplate, roll it around, see. Nididhyasana, live as if it's true. Live as if it's true. So Swami's poster child for that. I was poster child for a lot of the disturbances too. But also, I had enough faith that the teaching was correct, that I'm not the body, to walk across the country without asking for anything. And then I learned something, for gosh sakes. It's a science experiment, right? What did we learn? We learned, it's true, I am not the body. It's absolutely, completely true, without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt, without any consideration of it whatsoever. I am not this body, I am not these thoughts. It is absolutely correct. I am of the light alone. So that's what was learned. Does that rock your world?
Wow. So it comes to a deeper conviction. That's not a voice from within. It is, because how does that come? That still has to be a thought. But
It's just a result of the science experiment, Gopala.
it's directly experiential.
It's directly experiential.
Yeah.
Applying a different formula. Not listening to myself. Okay, listening to myself lovingly, but not following myself. See, today, does that resonate? Listening to myself lovingly, recognizing I hear your pain. I hear your pain. I hear your suffering. I hear this is difficult. I get you. But not following it, right? So when Yami was here with us, she used that term self-talk, which was so beautiful because that's a way that we deal with it, right? And get ourselves to take that next step is through this self-talk. I hear you, dear. I hear you. I love you. I love you. I would have these conversations. I hear you. I love you. But I followed you, and it's just not working for me.
It's like a divorce.
No, it's not like a divorce. It's not like a divorce. It's the mind. This mind is your first child. You have a child before any other child, and that child is the mind. And so, if you have a child externally, love doesn't mean to do what it says, does it, Sita Devi? What does that look like? From birth, you do everything Narayana says. Without question. It looks like a mess, doesn't it? I'm sure it's beautiful in some universe, but... So consider the mind to be your child. And so it will assert. But see it not as something to follow, but as something that you're dealing with. Something that you're in the process of cultivating, instructing, and teaching, and helping to grow. Peace Pilgram used to talk about the different types of growing up, 3 levels. Physical growing up, which would naturally happen. Emotional and mental growing up, which is really this. Right? Growing up emotionally and mentally. And what is that instrument of emotion and mentality? That's the mind. So, and again, mind, but we have higher mind and we have lower mind. We see that. Okay, we'll come back to this commentary on the next, but a true and steady yogi is utterly content with the wisdom of real knowing, is not disturbed by anything, has controlled and calmed his or her senses, and looks with equal vision on a dirt clod, a stone, or a nugget of gold. And there's a beautiful commentary from Swami Venkatesananda. We'll come back to that tomorrow morning. Yes. A true and steady yogi is utterly content with the wisdom of real knowing. What does that mean? We've always been seeking knowledge. And so when real knowing dawns and when there's conviction in it, conviction is a good word as opposed to faith. Because faith is a belief, but it's a firm belief, a conviction. Which is rooted in knowing, but a knowing that cannot be achieved through the senses, that which can't be touched by the senses, but nonetheless that which is real. And so the conviction comes and it's firm. Why? Because it's been tested. again, this life is a science experiment. We're always testing these theories. We tested whether the girl or the guy would do it. We tested whether the money would do it. We tested whether running away to the forest would do it. I mean, how many births? We've tested so much. And here now we're testing these teachings. We're putting them into practice, aren't we? Mm-hmm. And so we're testing them. And so we learn something from it. We learn something by putting it into practice. And what we learn, finally, with great conviction, unshakable, then we're not seeking some other knowledge at that point. Because at some point, we understand. What did the Buddha say when he was glowing and walking along the road and people were asking, are you a god? Are you this? Are you that? He said, I'm awake. Right. And he just said it matter-of-factly. He wasn't proud of it or anything. He just said, no, I'm awake. Right? I know. No, I know. I know. People say we know. But if you live it, then you know it. And so a true and steady yogi is utterly content with the wisdom of real knowing. Right? What else? Now, we still learn. We still learn. We absolutely still learn. Learning is not done then. So many opportunities continue to be given. And what are you going to be? You're just going to be a lump when you know what's here? Or you're just going to be a lump and not respond to anything that happens? You don't want to be of service to the world? You don't want to be of benefit? You don't want to help others to awaken to who they are? Right? So you're going to continue to learn. The world, the Lord, in the form of the world, will provide endless opportunities to keep learning and to be of service in this way or that way. This is a perfectly good instrument. This is a perfectly good instrument. There was nothing wrong with it all along. When right seeing is here, it doesn't wander, which means it can be focused. It's not seeking something for itself, which means that it can be employed in service. It doesn't say, what about me? It says, how can we be of benefit here? Right? Like this. So, not disturbed by anything, has controlled and calmed his or her senses. It's okay, dear, settle down. This is an inner talk. It's okay, dear, settle down. It's okay. Take a breath. It's okay. Self-talk. And looks with equal vision on a dirt cloud, a stone, or a nugget of gold. And we'll come back to that in the morning. And number 9 as well, just after. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Is it helpful?
Yes. Look, this is how I've done it.
Yes, dear.
When I'm researching the stuff I like to research, I look for people who are talking about it, but then I cross-reference constantly. So if other people who are also talking about it, it flows with their knowledge, and then over years, if it still checks out, then I'm like, okay, well, this sounds pretty good then. And then I put it into my reference file. Yeah.
Okay. So you're describing then after contemplating. So first you've listened to what they've had to say. And then after contemplating, and you're contemplating by checking, by considering, by reflecting on it, by listening to others in the field, etc. Yeah. Contemplation, mananas. Yeah. And then after a while you accept it to be true and you live according to it, nididhyasana.
Right.
Okay. So, and that's your science experiment. So you see what fruit comes of it.
Yeah.
And the thing to look for is the fruit peace?
Yes, it is.
That's the question. Is the fruit peace? Check in on the fruit.
Yeah.
Check in on the fruit. Check and see if the mind is disturbed, because the state of the mind will be the fruit.
Yeah. At first it was. I was very disturbed.
Okay. Does that make sense? The state of the mind. When you see the state of the mind, you're seeing the fruit of your experiment. The fruit of the seeds that you're planting.
Yeah.
So if the fruit is peace,
Yeah.
then you know that you're onto something.
Yeah. Thank God it's peace.
Oh. Okay.
So when I first came to ashram, I was in the process of my life that I was searching for peace, peace of mind. And I tried so many routes to try to find that after all the detrimental ones. And it still wasn't sufficient, because when I came here, my desire just like sparked again, and it was desire to learn. But now it's just a desire to just be here. And the learning is not an issue, it's just happening. Is that a normal transgression or transition?
Normal is an interesting word, but you're describing the process of awakening. When you learn something that's beneficial and you observe the fruit is more peaceful and equanimous inner state, and you apply it outwardly, and you live according to that, and you share it, then that's that process of fructifying of peace.
And the desire in the beginning has been replaced with just patience and knowing. It's
Patience is knowing, actually. Patience is knowing. Patience is born of knowing.
okay.
Patience is born of knowing. Right? Patience doesn't mean idle waiting
No.
for something. The gardener, for example, knows that if they plant a rose bush and care for it a certain way, that the rose is there. So that process, the gardener is patient for that, and can be completely patient because there's knowledge. So they don't just wait to see if a rose will come. They know.
And the experiential too, because the growing sense of ease through life and peace of mind.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh. That's the process. We'll pick up maybe in a noon workshop soon. Ramana Maharshi speaks to this, but the bhumikas, the steps of awakening, it's helpful to be aware of them as signposts. So we talk about them a little bit during TTC, Yoga TTC, for example. So I don't know if Uma Devi and Anjaneya have, I don't know if that's been covered yet. You remember that, right?
Yeah.
The bhumikas it's just a line item in one day. We read them and talk about them a little bit, but I think as a group we'll come back to them again. They're helpful signposts. Okay, let's close with final prayers and arati. We'll have the short one. Mataji, anything to add on the discussion this morning? Okay, Mataji. Always appreciate your insight. Everyone's here. Okay. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivarnam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanam Ritor Mushiyama Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivarnam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanam Ritor Mushiyama Mritat Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushtivarnam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanam Mritor Mushiyama Mritat Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Adorable Lord of mercy and love, let us abide in thee forever and ever. Om Bolo Sakuru Shivananda Maharaji Ki, and for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Jai.